You may ask how to do this book. Basically started out as a historian's quest, okay? So, you might have heard of people that have done things like, I want to see all of the different California missions, right? Or I want to go up Highway 49 and visit all the different gold rush towns, things like that. Well, crazy me, I said, I want to see all the historical sites in the San Francisco Bay Area. So, 3 years later, and 220 sites, I actually finished this quest. There's still a few I haven't made it to because their hours are funny and things like that, but I have actually gone to almost all of those sites myself. So it turned out pretty interesting, actually. My kids say, Dad, don't take me to any more history museums. We can go to anything but a history museum. One of the things I had to decide with the book is, what is a museum? Is it a museum if it's just a historical marker on the side of the road? Not really, Is it a historical site if it's privately owned and they don't let anybody in? Well, that's no use to anybody. Or if it's strictly archives, that's interesting for we professionals, but not necessarily for the general public, right? Categorized as a museum, it had to have something in there that the public could go see. Then the next question was, what is the Bay Area? And that may be a lot harder than you actually think. The Association of Bay Area Governments classifies anything as Bay Area that touches the Bay. So there's 9 counties, and so I'm thinking, how far up Sonoma County do I want to go? Because it goes pretty far up there. So I do actually have the book at Fort Ross and being sold, and all the way down here to King City at the Agricultural Museum. So that's quite a large geographical area there. I should really also include Santa Cruz and Monterey counties, because anybody that would be visiting San Francisco is likely to also visit those places. So then the next question was, well, who is this book for? Okay, there are lots of books out there about travel and things like that. And you might ask yourself, why not just look it up on a website, right? And I did that. But I really wanted this to be a lot more than what a website can provide. And actually, you'd be surprised, there's places out there that don't even have a website. There's places out there that don't even have a phone number. So getting information into the hands of the average person that wants to go see a historical site is actually a lot harder than you think. And I've been to places where they'll have a posted time on their website. I drive an hour and a half to go see it, no one's there. So that's very frustrating for the public. Some of the places I went to up to 2-3 times, nobody there during the time when they're posted to be open. And they have shortages of volunteers and docents and things, I understand that. But that can be frustrating. Also, websites aren't always up to date, they don't always have all the information. So I really wanted more than just, what's the address? Anybody can look up the address in their phone, right? I wanted to say, what is in this museum? What makes it interesting? So what I did was I wrote a little brief for the layperson, summary of what was happening in California during that era. So there's a little brief thing on each era of history for California. And then to make it fun, I made like checklists after each era. So the family can go through and say, we've seen all the gold rush sites, we've seen all the World War II sites, things like that. And then unfortunately in California, this is one thing I've always advocated, we don't have enough California history after the gold rush. The average layperson out there thinks California stopped at the gold rush, right? So we become a state and then nothing else ever happened in California. And there have been a few textbook publishers that have made an outreach to try to get California supplements to be included with the state-approved textbooks and things like that. I think that's a great idea because there's a lot of really important things that happened in California in the World Wars, in the Cold War especially. You've got all the social movements of the 60s, you've got the technology boom. So I made sure I included all of those sites as well, because there's a lot more to California than just, we found gold and it became a state. So that's another thing that's in there. So it's for anybody. It's for a teacher that wants to do a field trip. It's for anybody that is just a history buff, history professionals. It could be just somebody looking for somewhere to take the kids, an interesting place on the weekend. Let's go out on a little outing or whatever. And what I found doing the research for this was, there's a lot of people out there that don't know that these wonderful places exist. I literally would be driving around trying to find a place, and I'll say, "Could you give me directions to the historical museum?" And invariably, I'd be at the Taco Bell or something, and somebody would say, "We have a historical museum here in town." And that happened quite a lot, yeah. And then I also wanted to do it for all these really dedicated people that work at these historical sites and museums and help them out, because they're sort of suffering in obscurity and working hard, saying, I literally would have places where people would say, no one has come to our site all day, you're the first one. And that was heartbreaking. It's like, oh, this is such a great thing. And of course, once you get them talking, you can't shut them up, right? Because they want to tell you everything about their site and the founders and all the wonderful things that happen there. And they have these wonderful stories. I found all these interesting things like museums in the Bay Area, a cartoon history museum. Who would have thought, right? Museums that have a special display on Phyllis Diller because she was born there, or John Madden, or whatever. There's all kinds of fascinating things out there. The shrunken little styrofoam cup that they took down to the bottom of the ocean in a submarine and it compressed, that's interesting things like that out there that people should see and especially to get connected with their own community. I'll never forget, I was at one house, wonderful Victorian mansion, sweet, dear lady, senior citizen. She's there, her, full-length Victorian gown, giving her tour. She's going to show me how the Victrola works, right? Next thing you know, boom, she's down on the ground. I'm like, uh-oh, what do we do? Dead docent, that's not good, right? what do we do in this situation, right? And I thought, oh my dear, what do I do now? And this poor lady, as she says, she pops herself right back up again and says, oh, the legs, sometimes they just don't work the way they're supposed to. Oh my, are you okay? So, and I thought, what, God bless this lady, here she is, she's volunteering her time, giving people these tours, and I want to do something to try to help people like this. They're so dedicated, they work so hard, and there's all these great stories out there about these places. People need to know about them, and to honor these people and help them out. So basically, get people through the door, get the traffic in there, because they all want to do it, but they don't know how to attract people. So that's why I read the book, was to try to help these people out. So there's the chapters on each part of California history, the checklist, and then the museum staff can sign off that says, oh, you've been here, you've seen X number of gold rush sites, so you're a 49er, that sort of thing. Listings of museums by category. So we have, for example, you can say, I want to see all of the World War II ships, or I want to see all the agricultural museums, that sort of, so there's categories. I want to see everything in Monterey County, that sort of thing. There's checklists for that. Each individual museum, so there's a full page listing on each one, and I ask, what do they have for children? Do they have an archives? Is there are there hands-on things? Are there and then the usual things like what are their hours, their location, all that sort of stuff. And I wanted to do that because a lot of the websites are well-meaning, but they don't really tell you what's there. So I really put a lot of information in the book about what do they actually have there. So, did you know this place has a Civil War drum, or, this place has a World War II machine gun, or whatever, And what I found is they're not always all that well organized. Sometimes these places just like somebody's flea market, they just sort of put a bunch of junk in there. And then you're, as a historian, you're walking through and you're going, oh my God, that's like an actual Civil War pistol, right? And it's not labeled, so that the general public wouldn't know that. So I even included at the end of the book a few tips for people who run the museums, to say, well, you need to do things like move the displays around a little bit. Don't always have the same displays. Have things that are disabled access. Have reenactors. That really draws the public in. Have interactive displays. And I know all these things cost money. But that's what grants are for, right? So, you can add a lot of these things to make the museum more accessible to the public. And then so I showcase some of the ones that I really think do a fantastic job, like the museum in Oakland. Actually, one of the best ones I saw was not very far from here, the Agricultural Museum in Watsonville. It's fantastic. They have just really practical things for kids, like, Watsonville's known for apples, so they have all these little model apples, and the kids get in there and sort different brands of apples, and, milk an electronic cow, and all this kind of stuff. Like, that's great, They have an outdoor display with like 400 tractors or something. It's just really cool stuff that kids would really relate to. I also mentioned a lot of ways that people can help out their local historical society or museum. A lot of people aren't aware of that. Of course, membership is a huge thing, like you were talking about before. Volunteering time is huge. A lot of people think, I can't help these people. I don't have a degree in history. They need gardeners. They need people to fix the fence. There's parking lot attendants. Anybody can help out. It doesn't necessarily have to be a docent. A lot of them have special events, so I encourage the general public to get out to these events. And some of them are really amazing, like one museum has a cemetery tour. And what a great idea. You know, they take the local historical cemetery and then they have actors play the part and stand next to the tombstone and, you know, here I am, Mr. Founder, and then tell their story and that sort of thing. Just crazy things like that that people do. Or another one that's really great is the Alameda Museum. Brilliant idea. They have the, you know, you have your usual museum there, but then instead of just having a little gift shop with a book or two in the front, they have an antique store. And I'm thinking, that's brilliant. Okay, you're looking at old stuff, you want to buy old stuff, right? I mean, so a lot of them make really interesting connections like that, like the Air Museum in Oakland. They have the airplane that was used in the Indiana Jones movie. So then when you go to the gift shop, they sell replica hats of Indiana Jones, and I thought, how smart.